program, they've declined it, and you need to get that in writing from them that they're declining participation in
that would be my recommendation, absolutely. To protect yourself against actions from the state like this. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Another one they said was that we were encouraging homeowners to stop making payments on their home loans, which, again, is not the truth. We've never told anyone not to make their payment on their home loan. Now, we do tell them about the landscape. We do let them know that, generally speaking, most lenders at the time, back in 2009, if you submitted a short sale to a lender and your homeowner was current on their payment, chances are that short sale would get kicked back and the lender would say that no hardship exists. They're making their payment. We think they'll continue to make their payment, and we're not going to do the short sale. And the cases that they were using, or the instances that they were using as their evidence for us having done this, were from 2009. And as we all know, the landscape has changed. Every 6 months, the landscape of short sales changes. So this is a perfect example of where the state is simply out of touch with, what's really happening in the marketplace. But, again, as advice to agents out there, don't ever tell anyone to stop making their payments. We never did, and even though we didn't, we were accused of doing it. And so this is another good instance where, as part of your process, it would be wise and helpful if you had the homeowner sign something saying that you advise them to continue making their payments, so that these allegations can't be brought against you.
Well, I guess if you don't make the homeowner sign a statement that, number one, like in the guarantee program, that if the home doesn't sell, that you're not a participant, and so we're not going to buy your house, Mr. Seller. And two, if they're a short sale on their, perhaps they're not making payments already, or if they are, they want to stop, you actually put it in writing, because a client can claim that you told them not to do it, and it would be your word against theirs.
Correct. And that's why my suggestion would be to put it in writing that they are aware that you have recommended that they continue making their payment. Very important. So another one they came up with was they said we were listing prices at listing homes at artificially low prices.
And this is now, right?
Well, yeah, and, frankly, if the industry got together and started deciding what prices things should be at, that would be racketeering. And so for the state to come in and say that my seller has to price their home at a certain price is absolutely asinine to me. I mean, I personally don't understand that. But second of all, that's not what happened. We actually did just the opposite. We would always price our homes above market value, not below market value. We'd price it above market value, and we would reduce the price every couple of weeks until we found a buyer. Well, as we know, we're in a free economy, and so, if the home drops to a price that it's all of a sudden this great deal, you would expect that in a free economy that it would start to get offers. And at that point, we've determined what the true market value is. And in this world of short sales and foreclosures and ever-changing pricing and economic shifts, it's difficult to determine what the actual value of a short sale versus an REO is on any given day. And the very best way to do that, as we all know, is to find out what a buyer's willing to pay for it, because isn't that what value is, what a buyer's willing to pay for a property?
Well, it sounds like, now these are allegations made by the Attorney General, right?
That's correct.
So it sounds like this Attorney General either was a real estate agent, perhaps in his former career, and he knows kind of some understanding of the market, or that perhaps he's not really aware of how things work and is taking the advice of other agents who have this complaint against you and putting it in writing. It doesn't sound like allegations that would be coming from, a politician and an attorney representing the state.
Well, ultimately, it's the State Department of Licensing, and so they have some knowledge of how real estate works. Unfortunately, as we all know, the landscape has changed in the last couple of years. I mean, since June of 2007, when the money shut off, the economic landscape just changed entirely, as did the landscape of the entire real estate business. And so the challenge is that they get so caught up at the Department of Licensing in dealing with the things that they deal with on a daily basis that they're really not in tune with what's happening in the marketplace. It's kind of like your county assessor. Your assessed value on your property doesn't change as quickly as the actual value of your property changes, right, whether it's up or down. And particularly when the value of your property drops, my guess is, it took a year and in many cases 2 years for the value, according to the assessor's office, to drop, even though you know that your home's value dropped a year or 2 years ago. So another one they came up with was listing homes at prices that were not authorized by homeowners, and this is absolutely categorically false. This is, we literally have signed price reductions on every single one of our transactions and our listings, and would never change a price without the authorization of the homeowner. And in fact, this is one of the dichotomies that creates a challenge with our multiple listing service, and here's where the challenge comes. The state obviously says, I have to have something in writing from my homeowner to change a price. If I have a short sale and I have submitted that short sale, I find a buyer for it, I submit that short sale to the lender, and the lender comes back, and let's say my price was $100,000. And the lender comes back and they say, well, we're not going to accept the $100,000. We want $125,000. Right. Well, I'm not allowed to change the price in the multiple listing service without signatures from my seller. But what happens if I'm not able to get those signatures from the seller right now? What happens if my seller's out of town, or my seller's difficult to get a hold of, or my seller's not returning my calls, which in short sales happens all the time? Right. If I'm not able to get that communication with the seller, here's where the real problem comes. Now my multiple listing association comes back and says, wait a minute, you have, as does the state in their own complaint here, the state and the MLS come back and say, you have a home listed at an artificially low price. Well, wait a minute. You're penalizing me because I have it at an artificially low price, and yet if I go and I change the price to what the bank came back at without my seller's signature, I'm also violating the law. So at what point am I not responsible for this? I've done everything I can possibly do to make sure the price accurately and it reflects what the true value of the home is and what the bank will or will not accept, but I can't make that change without my homeowner's signature. So I'm darned if I do, I'm darned if I don't. Wow. And let me tell you, I've been fined on that one too. I've actually been fined as much as $2,500 on that one as well.
So what does the state say? What are you supposed to do?
They don't. They say that you have to get your seller's signature. They give no alternative if you can't get a hold of your seller. There is no alternative. You are in violation either of multiple rules or of state law, and sometimes of both, if you cannot get a hold of your seller and make that change to the price when the bank has come back and said, no, we want a higher price.
Can all of this be ratified after the fact, or perhaps during the close?
Sure. No, the problem, again, is not what happens a week from now. It's what happens today. The day the bank comes back with that new price, I'm responsible for making sure my price is accurate in the multiple, but I cannot change that price in the multiple without authorization from my seller. And if I can't get a hold of my seller, if they've gone AWOL on me, I have no opportunity to be in compliance with either the multiple or state law at that point because I can't get a hold of my seller.
So you're in violation of MLS rules as well as state law in doing that?
Regardless of what I do at that point.
Wow.
That's correct. And this is a perfect example of how out of touch our state law is and the government is with what's going on in the real world. They really don't understand the process. They don't understand that when that bank comes back with that changed price, it's not as simple as I'm going to pick up the phone and get a hold of my homeowner, because a lot of times these homeowners are in emotional distress as well as financial distress, and sometimes they just aren't able to be gotten a hold of. I can go sit on their porch. I can go track them down at work, and a lot of times they're not there. They may go on vacation and not tell me about it. They might just be hiding. They might just not be emotionally equipped to handle it at the time, and that's very common.
Right.
Yeah, very challenging. So there's another one. Here's another one: misrepresenting the contents of the listing agreement and this is another perfect example where what they were talking about here is the expiration date of our listing agreements. They're saying they accused me of telling people that it was a 6-month listing, when in reality that it was a 2 or a 3-year listing agreement. And on short sales, my longest short sale, the one that took us the longest to get it done, took 2 years and 1 month to close. And thank goodness we had a 3-year listing agreement on that transaction. But we did get it closed, and the homeowner was happy, and so was we went through 6 buyers on that transaction. But at the end of the day, our listing agreements were always pre-printed. We had the expiration date pre-printed on our listing agreements, so there was no misrepresentation. It was printed as such when they signed it. We explained it to them when we signed it, and for anyone to say that there was any misrepresentation is absolutely ludicrous, particularly when it's pre-printed before we even arrive at the home. So
now, Mike, I'm really surprised to hear. So, is there an issue that the listing expired, or that you had a 3-year listing agreement? Because this is my first of hearing anyone with a 3-year listing agreement.
And 3 years is the longest I've heard of. I'll say generally ours were 2 years. More often than not, they were a 2-year listing agreement, and that was why, because short sales, particularly in 2009, they were taking a long, long time. Most of the big lenders were 8-9 months to get some of these things closed. And time frames have certainly come down since then, and a lot of the lenders have gotten a lot better at it. But no, the issue was not the length of the listing agreement. The issue was their accusation is that we said that it was a 6-month agreement, and in reality it was a 2 or a 3-year agreement. And the bottom line is, no, we never said that, ever. First of all, we never, ever, ever would have told someone that it was a 6-month agreement, because we've never done 6-month agreements. I've never, in years and years, in 20 years of selling real estate, I can't think of the last time I ever did a 6-month listing agreement. Maybe when I was back in high school, possibly, but I don't even think I was doing it back then.
So what's your standard listing time? This is interesting.
Our standard is 2 years.
Like standard operating procedure out here for a 6-month listing agreement, even on a short sale.
Yeah, and a lot of agents use a 6-month listing agreement. I don't. I've always used a 2-year listing agreement, and the way I look at it is, hey, look, if you're ever unhappy with me, we'll cancel your listing. No big deal. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to, particularly on a short sale, I'm not going to go put my staff on the line and go to that amount of effort and expense to help you with your situation if you're not going to make a similar commitment to me. Because I'm committing thousands of dollars in staff time and marketing and such to making this happen. And these transactions do take a long time. I want to know that, if I do all this work, that I'm going to get paid in 6 months on a short sale is a very short listing time.
Well, what's the typical response? What are the typical objections you hear for something like that? Because I'm thinking now, I don't know of a single realtor in town. I know a lot of realtors who have a listing agreement greater than 6 months. If so, it's the exception and not the rule. So, and you're telling me this is the rule for you and how you operate your business, and you do a lot of business. Obviously you're not running into too many objections, or you wouldn't be doing the volume you're doing. But what's a typical objection from a client who?
We don't get objections. Here's the thing, particularly in the case of short sales. Where they're going to lose the home, it's going to go to foreclosure. At the end of the day, they don't care. They want to be rid of this thing. What they want is they want somebody who knows what they're doing, who's going to come in and take control and make this happen for them. What they're not as concerned about is, hey, I don't plan on changing agents in 6 months, particularly when they fully understand the length of time the process takes. And that's a big piece of this, is they have to really fully understand the length of time this process takes. And to the extent that you do a good job of explaining that, the length of the listing agreement is not an issue for them. And I'll be honest with you, I've listed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of homes. I've got, just with the listing appointment that we teach our coaching clients, I've used that listing appointment on over 530 appointments with virtually 100% success. If I wanted the listing, we got it. And we got it every time with a 2-year listing agreement with automatic price reductions every time. Those aren't the issues they're concerned about. What they're concerned about is, are you the right person to take care of my challenge? Are you going to help me out of my situation? And to the extent you can do that, the rest is not a big deal to them.
Well, I guess you're right. And I think we'll start seeing a lot of listing agreements change.
Here's another good one. This is a big one. This one floors me. they accused us of failing to provide copies of executed listing agreements to the homeowners at the time of execution. Now, Eric, as you and I both know, listing appointments happen, by and large, at the home, at the person's home. What the state is saying is, when I'm out on that listing appointment, once they sign the agreement, I have to photocopy the agreement right then and there and hand it to them. Eric, I don't know any real estate agents nationally that carry a copy machine in the back of their car. And unless you're carrying a copy machine in the back of your car, you are not able